sit down along the front and the sides, so please make yourself welcome. We've got to keep the doors clear out there. There'll be something all night you'll hear us following up on. Wow, you got quiet quick. All right, we have a lot to do tonight. This will be a challenging format, but I think it'll be fun. You'll see it'll seem rushed sometimes because it will be. We've got a lot of people to get through, but we got to get as much information out there. To keep things moving along, I'm going to bring Richard Grusin up from hometown and do a little pitch for us, so I don't have to do it.
Full house, great. Thank you all who are members of hometown, who have been with us year in and year out, so we can bring you these forums to buy the food and to have a place for all of us to gather and to become informed voters. And so my pitch to you is, if you haven't signed up as a member yet, please do. And Mark Bailey right there is showing you one of our sign-up things, and it really helps us to put these on. The one other thing I want to say is, and I'm preaching to the choir because you're all here, is one of the most important elections coming up that I think we've seen in decades. And I know all of you, most of you, whoever, you're all registered, there's no doubt about it, but please talk to people, get them out, because the most important thing we can do this election is vote. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Todd, and so we can do what we do.
Okay, thank you, Richard. I want to bring up Commissioner of Agriculture candidate, Jeff Porter. He is also the mayor of Homestead. I'll let him. It's nice to have a commissioner candidate up here, so we figured we'd give him a minute, just a minute.
He told me he's already got the hooks in me, so look, I just wanted to come down and say hello and good evening. Today is my my anniversary. We happen to be down here celebrating the great city of Key West, so thank you very much. You know, I am currently the mayor of the city of Homestead. I've served over there for about 15 years. I grew up there. My wife and I were both born there. I'm trying to hurry up because I know I'm going to get janked off here. But, you know, I think that you got to realize that the job that we're talking about is not just agriculture. It's community. It's consumer services as well. We're all consumers. We're not all farmers. But I think that what this job is, we ought to really find out more about this, because it is really incredible how positively this can impact us or how negatively this can impact us. I've seen agriculture in Homestead, you know, just die. And so, you know, my wife and I, she let me run for this position. Statewide, it's a big job. It's a big job. What you do on a day-to-day basis, your candidates here, they're very important to you locally. This is a very important position for us statewide. I'm running as a Democrat. I am a Democrat, been a lifelong Democrat. I ask for your vote. I'm not going to waste any of your time. I got some really important stuff. Thank you for letting me just have a brief second to introduce myself. God bless you all. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Jeff. I hope you said you have a great dinner tonight. Key West has a lot of great cuisine. If we could get the Keys Energy candidates to come on up, and while they're doing that, I'll have our panelists introduce themselves tonight. Why don't you start off, Bill?
Bill Becker, News Director, US 1 Radio and Florida Keys Media.
Bryan Green, I'm Chairman of HARC, Chairman of Take Stock, and also Vice Chairman of Wesley House.
I'm Kay Harris. I'm the editor of the Key West Citizen.
I'm John Dolan-Heitlinger, now a 26-year resident of Key West, and I've had a variety of positions here in town. I've served on half the not-for-profit boards. I've been involved peripherally in politics since I've been here, so it's a great opportunity for me to serve.
A couple things before we get started. We are live streaming, correct? We're live streaming, hometownkeyWest.com. Also, please, everybody, check yourselves in on Facebook and such. And I'll do something I really hate doing, I've never done it much, but if everybody would wave. We will post that. And I've actually had some criticism. People think I'm playing solitaire or something up here. All through these events, I'm getting messages on keeping track of who spoke, how much time it is. Sometimes I screw up, but we try to be interactive, and it's fun. We have Gwen Pelosi here, and she has a following of thousands. Here's my time. Thank you, Michael. Here we have Keys Energy, and this is CA, correct? One of you guys, Mona, you start. You have 1 minute to introduce yourself, and then we will get right into questions.
Good evening. It all means nothing if you don't stand up for something. I stand up for you, and I stand up for you, and I stand up for you. My name is Mona C. Clark, and I'm running for re-election to the Utility Board, CA.
Very good.
I didn't practice a song. But good. I like Jim. No. My background is television, broadcast TV, ABC, NBC, etc. Traveled around the world and found Key West and loved it and decided to settle here. And I'm lucky enough to be the general manager of the Gardens Hotel, a very green hotel. And we just won the Bubba last night. If you're not a Bubba, what are you? Anyways, it's a green, I believe by leading by example. I'm a homeowner here, I'm married. I give a lot of my time to various organizations here. And I'm proud to be a representative of you for the utility, and I'll definitely try and bring it into a greener environment. And I brought props. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna get right into questions. We'll have Bill start. We're gonna start with 90-second answers. The rules tonight, they'll be a little flexible depending on the race, but the panelists are in charge for the most part. I have veto power, but they can ask both questions, both candidates, or just one candidate, and we'll see how it goes. They've all done it before, so Bill, you got it.
Question for Mona Clark. Mona, you've been on the utility board for 14 years now. What would you point to as something that you championed on the utility board with Keys Energy and were successful at? What did you push?
How many? You want me to go?
Your top priority. What did you accomplish?
Top priority would be reliability and safety. But aside from that, I'm very proud to say that our storm hardening project, which is ongoing, to storm harden our infrastructure is very important to the community, the utility, and very necessary. Aside from that, I would have to say it was quite an investment to bring two of our main facilities up to withstand a Category 5 hurricane. And if you think about that, Hurricane Irma was a hurricane Category 4. And we were very effective before and after that particular hurricane.
Thank you, Mona.
Oh, no. I had one more.
I will. You'll get to do it later.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Brian.
This is for Jim. What have you done to prepare yourself to serve? Have you attained a detailed knowledge of Keys Energy? Attended board meetings, taken the Key West City Ambassador Program, Leadership Monroe, Circle Monroe, volunteer boards? Tell us more.
I ran for this office, not the same seat, 4 years ago, and I attended the meetings at that time. And if you remember, that was when No Name Key was in a legal battle to one person wanted to have utilities and the others didn't. And that was when that was happening. I'm signing up for the ambassador program in the winter months. We're going to do that. I have not done that. I think meeting with several of the board members to bring me up to speed on what has happened in 4 years. I met with Lynn for about 45 minutes, bringing me up to speed. And there's been progress, mainly the building coming back in, but I disagree with the building being done, but not having any solar with it when the BP money went to the city. I think Keys Energy should lead by example. Thank you.
This question is for Mona. Do you think, Mr. Marquardt just brought up the money that Keys Energy gave to the city for their solar project. Do you think the city of Key West spent that money wisely?
I do believe that that was a necessary collaboration. And if I could say a little more about solar, we do have a couple of small projects, one being the Eco Discovery Center. Right now, we are in the process of collaborating with FMPA, and we're included with 11 cities where we are going to be entering into a solar project that's going to take 235 megawatts, and we have purchased, our investment is 5 megawatts. So I do think that we're working towards expanding. We're also doing that for the purpose of expanding what offerings we can give to our customers or ratepayers. But at the same time, we have to keep in mind that even though the prices are going down, where we buy our natural gas,
You got it. See the guy with the yellow sign?
I don't want him. I'll add more later.
Okay, in keeping with terms, Jim, you've been interested in this position or another one for some time. During the time that you've been reviewing budgets and operations at Keys Energy Services, how would you characterize how the budget has changed over those years, and do you have any criticism of it?
I think the Keys Energy has reduced staff and therefore reduced budget. But the biggest thing, if I'm going to represent you as Seat A, I don't need a retirement program. I don't need health insurance. I think the board should cut those and lead by example. That money is needed now with the utility, and I don't think that the utility board members should be paid a dime more than a city commissioner. I just think start with myself. You know, we're putting solar at my house. Put solar in your pool. Start small, but as an elected official, start with yourself, and that's what I would do. I would lead the fight against retirement. Why do we need retirement? We're there 4 years, 14 years. I mean, see what happens, see who comes up to the board when you don't have a high salary, a retirement, and health benefits.
Question for Jim. A couple of years ago, we saw a pretty pitched battle over No Name Key, the electrification of No Name. We had the folks who wanted electricity, and we had the solar community out there. An environmentally sensitive area. If another area of the Lower Keys appealed to you for electricity and an environmentally sensitive area, what would go into your decision to vote for that or not?
If I had to vote on No Name Key, I would have voted no. I would have said the people are there, they don't want it. And if they're going to bring a lawsuit against you, well, you know, it's not there. In another environmentally sensitive, it's environmentally sensitive, but solar can replace the hard wire. Thank you.
Mona, I want to go back, if I can, to the cost of the board. The Keys Energy website is very informative. What I was somewhat surprised to see from there was that the board costs $408,000 a year. The benefits to utility board members are receiving with salary and benefits $31,000 a year. And I really want to ask you this question was, do you think the consumers are getting value for that money?
Yes, I do. Can you hear me? I do believe that they're getting value for that money. My particular salary, and I'm a board member, so my salary is different from that if you take a look at the chair or what have you. And my salary, which, just to tell you a brief story, when I first was appointed to that board before I had to be elected a short time after, like 5 months. Okay. But when this salary, we meet twice a month. We have a travel budget, which is approximately $51,000 for the entire board and the attorney. But this is to attend conferences and meetings that bring us up to code or up to standards, the different trends within the utility, the different trends across the industry.
Time.
This question is for Tim. If you are elected, is there anything, in your opinion, that you can do to assist in getting some of our energy costs under control? We've had some pretty extensive rate hikes. A lot of folks' bills have gone up a lot in the last few years. Is there anything you think you can do to help arrest that and turn it the other way?
As I understand it, the utility buys on futures. Like I said at the Boondocks, coal, we have a president who likes coal. Previously we didn't. The coal plant was scheduled for demolition. They have 6 years of futures, so 2 years left. But I brought some props here, really good example. Here's a plastic straw. We don't like plastic straws anymore. We're going to paper straws or recyclable. But we do paper straws at the hotel. That costs more than these. So again, I'm going back to solar. I don't want to be the heartbeat of solar. Any alternative energy, but solar is going to cost more, quite simply. And what Mona didn't say was that small amount of megawatts we had to take. It's not just that we're doing it, and it's not going to be till 2021, and that's a small amount of power. And in the gamut of things, we can do things as homeowners and business owners. We can harden our house. We can harden our. Time up? Okay.
And Mona gets 30 seconds because Jim called her up. If you want to respond to what Jim said, otherwise you don't have to. 30 seconds.
Okay, 30 seconds.
Yes.
That project that was mentioned earlier, yes, it's just the 235 megawatts, and the placement is in 3 counties. However, yes, solar is coming down, but it still remains costly. Costly to the everyday employee, meaning our customers that live in our city, live in our keys. Even though the prices of solar is going down, we have families that can't afford that.
Okay.
This question is for Mona. Mona, I think one of the greatest potential catastrophes facing our nation and the world is a large-scale solar flare or something called electromagnetic pulse that can come from a nuclear weapon. The electrical grid in our country is woefully not prepared for such an instance. What has Keys Energy Service done since you've been there to make sure that we can survive that kind of natural catastrophe?
That's a heavy one. National catastrophe. Again, it goes back to everything that we've done to storm harden our infrastructure, all the measures that we take to bring up to standards or maintain our equipment, our processes and procedures, and also everything that we do to maintain our timeline and that infrastructure. And that's important, and when you talk about national catastrophe, that's a what if, what if, what if. Put up the sign.
We can use one quick question.
Quick question. Question for Jim, kind of a follow-up on that. Back in '92, Hurricane Andrew cut us off electricity. Keys Energy at the time had about 60% backup. The electric co-op only had about 10%. And there was a lot of talk about shipping electricity from the lower Keys up to Marathon and the upper Keys to help them. But that would have meant fewer electricity availability here for the lower Keys. How would you address that? Where would your balance sit?
Wherever the disaster is where we have to locate. But I think Keys Energy learned a lot from this particular hurricane, where to station. But I think the government was very, very responsive into bringing down generation and bringing in water and into the sites they could get into. We talked, Lynn and I briefly talked on what are we going to do next time? What did we learn here? What can we do better? Pre-stationing, hardening I know Bahama Village didn't have power, certain sections didn't have power for 2 weeks. This example from Irma prepares us for what's going to happen going forward. As a board member, I would be involved in those meetings and be involved in that process and be able to direct funds to that challenge. It takes money and it takes setting up ahead of time. I think the whole county learned, or actually the whole state learned from this where to station and how to harden for a future event.
Jim, if you were lucky and were elected, we're, God help us, sitting doing this all over again in 4 years' time, what initiative would you most like to claim to have achieved in that first 4 years?
As I always said, I think I would steer any opportunity we have to greener technology, not just solar. We have many opportunities to be greener. It's just simple. That's what it has to do. We care for our environment, we care for our reefs, we have reef relief, we have last stand. Why doesn't our utility company do that? The utility company does a lot of great PR. They do a lot of great press, another prop, things in the mail. They have a lot of community outreach on the radio, but hands-on, making it happen, steering to whatever we can. In fact, I don't think I would ever approve coal futures going forward. I'm sorry, but that's it.
Mona? Hello? Mona, you said that you think that solar is an expense that a lot of families cannot afford. What about making it a requirement for any new building in Key West rather than trying to make it retroactive?
You mean commercial or residential? Just any building? I could see commercial. I can see some individuals and Keys I would be willing to go with that or work with that. But then I'm looking at probably not the families that you're referring to that could afford that. I'm looking at the everyday family that may have kids, may have to work more than one job in order to stay in paradise. And the affordability for that is just not there. Because even though, as I said earlier, solar, the expense has gone down, it is still expensive in order to bring to the everyday individual. And I believe that to be true.
John, last question.
Jim, no slight intent, but I'm going to ask your competitor here because she's been in office for a while. Looking out, Mona, if we were having the same meeting 4 years from now, what would be the one thing that you would want to be able to say, we make this happen differently than what we've done in the past?
I would say because we're getting into expanding on solar, I moved to continue that, to continue encouraging FMPA, who we are associated with and have a collaboration with. Encourage Keys Energy to continue to look for ways that we can expand on our solar practices. To also look at ways that we can help families, help the community to better offerings for solar. So that's not something that's out of the question as far as looking at it and educating others on it, and also researching to see what can be done.
Thank you, Mona. Thank you for being right on time. Jim, Mona, thank you very much. One of these people will be your commission. We can get the candidate for District 4 to come up. Greg and Jen. I'll leave a break. I'd like to say hi to Ed Russo and his wife Jennifer. They're up in Bedminster watching this. So if you're watching this, let us know so we can know how far the reach is. How many live streamers do we have back there? Can you tell? No, can't tell? Oh. I'll say hello to everybody for us. All right, guys, welcome. Everyone, quiet down, everybody. Grab some seats. Quiet down. Gotta be polite. Greg, will you go ahead and introduce yourself? 1 minute.
Hello. Hi, my name is Greg Davila. I'm an attorney here in Key West for the last 27 years. I'm a parent with 2 kids, along with Heidi back there. They probably saw us as we were coming in. My son Marco, 12, and who's been here giving a great lesson in civics through the campaign. I also have an older son, Danny, who's 16, who is currently in Tanzania, Africa right now. So he's along with 13 other students from around the country. So we really miss him. He'll be here about 2 more weeks. So.
Thanks, Greg. Jen.
My name is Jen Stefanese. I've been in Key West for 8.5 years. I'm originally from New Jersey. I have my degree from Elon University in corporate communications and public relations. I'm a mom of a beautiful 7-year-old son. I'm on the board of Mason's Montessori and the head of fundraising. I would say I'm a well-educated bartender, just like most of us are that live here in this town. And I'm now the managing partner of TThe & Company, which is a little bar on Duval Street. When I decided to run and people would ask my platform, I would say, you know, we're all for affordable housing and all this stuff, but what I realized that the real problem with Key West is that there's such a lack of communication. Right now, if you go and ask a lot of the working class, we don't really know what the people that run this town do, and they don't really know what we do either, and I think that we're missing that. And if I were to be elected as city commissioner, I would be that bridge of communication because I am the epitome of the working class here. In the end, we all want the same thing: clean, safe, beautiful Key West for tourists and locals.
This one. Let's start with Greg, but this is really a question for both of you. We now know that developing affordable housing needs higher densities than is currently permitted in your district. Would you be willing to support changes to increase height and density to gain affordable housing in your area?
No.
Really quick answers can be for both.
I would be. It depends on where it is and everything, and if we can improve our infrastructure with that, we have to look at all aspects.
Okay.
This question is for Jennifer. You mentioned being a bar owner, etc., on Lower Duval, and to keep Key West clean for the tourists and for locals alike. how would you attempt to balance the quality of life for the residents of Key West versus the needs of the businesses and the tourists in the town?
Well, first of all, TThe Street is a mess right now. I don't know, there's 13 closed businesses right now on TThe Street. It's dirty. We have these cosmetic shops that are approaching our tourists, and it's a misrepresentation of us as a community and us as a tourism industry. So I would focus on cleaning up TThe Street, beautifying our town as a whole, but our main source of income and our main bloodline is tourism. So I would concentrate on TThe and making that a better, cleaner place for all of us, tourists and locals alike.
On the topic of affordable housing, what do you think are the 3 primary reasons we have a shortage of affordable housing in Key West?
Well, if I can solve this problem in 90 seconds, I'll try to do it. But, affordable housing is an issue that certainly I think it's an old problem. It's not limited to Key West. It's there's no easy solution to it. We're not going to be able to build ourselves out of this problem. Certainly, I think there are things that we can do. I just looked the other day, and there's over 1,500 government housing units in this city of 25,000 right now. Certainly there is a problem. I have 2 kids. I want my kids to come back and live here after they come back from college. I don't know if they can do that because the market might price them out of that. But I think a couple of things that we can do is certainly increase enforcement of illegal transient units. Though that will then open up that unit for a long-term renter perhaps, and then that will also do it. And hopefully the Navy will come along and do something with Sigsbee and increase those units and bring them online. So that our military personnel can either go back and live on Sigsbee, or if they open up to civilians can go live on Sigsbee. We're increasing.
Question for Gwen. The Cots Homeless Shelter. Excuse me, Jennifer, sorry. Question.
You're still famous.
The Cots Homeless Shelter. Where would you move it and when?
I'm not sure exactly where I would move it, but I do know that the homeless, we all love our favorite homeless people. We see them every single day. I know that we need cots. I know that dealing with homeless people, we need to also help with mental health down here as well. A lot of people are living in cots because they can't get first-class security, and they are working a lot, are living on the streets too. I'm not sure where I'd move it yet. I haven't been there yet, and I want to because I feel like I would have better education about it as well.
Right.
Greg, if elected, what 3 achievements would you like to look back on when we do this all over again in 2022? You see, I'm already fixated on the taste of this. So in 4 years' time, what 3 achievements would you like to have championed?
Well, first and foremost, I think we need additional green space for our children. If we can somehow maintain the current green space that we have and maybe create some additional green space, that would be one. I want to continue with quality of life for our residents, which means continue with, I know the city's trying to keep taxes that roll back this year. If we can continue with that, although there's additional pressures this year because of Hurricane Irma. And I'd like to increase transportation availability for our seniors. We really have a hard time with transportation for our seniors. Our seniors right now, if they have to go to the grocery store, pick up a bag of groceries, they have to pay a bus fare, although it may be a discounted rate. So it's really hard to justify to our seniors that live and work here, or that lived and work here, that they have to pay for a discounted bus fare, but our tourists get to ride the loop for free. So that's hard to sell in my district.
This question is for Greg. I believe you were a part of the Alternative Transportation and Parking Committee.
Yes.
Do you support a car-free Key West? And if so, why or why not?
Well, car-free Key West, as far as the advertising plan, if you're coming to visit Key West, to leave your car at home, I absolutely 100% agree with that. I don't think the car is going away, at least not in my lifetime or my children's lifetime, so I think we do have to make some accommodations for the car. We did our best. I think we proposed 22 or 23 different resolutions that I think are recommendations to the City Commission that we hope the City Commission will adopt. We're not going to be able to ease the congestion of cars in the City of Key West unless we create more land. So we can't do that, so we have to work with what we have. I think some of the resolutions or recommendations that we put forth were certainly really good recommendations, and I hope the city will adopt them.
This question is for Jennifer. The idea of making Duval Street a pedestrian-only street has come to the fore again. Every 4 or 5 years or so, this topic comes up. I'd like to know what your feelings are about that. Do you think we should do that? Do you think we should have experimentation on versions of it? What do you think we should do about that topic?
I like to look at other cities that have been successful in certain things. So I look at Reykjavik, Iceland, and after a certain point of the day, after the deliveries have all been dropped off, they have these beautiful like metal bicycle things that close and lock into the ground, and people take pictures on them, and they're all over social media. Now people are all traveling there because it's very clean, very safe, and very welcoming for the community. I think we definitely need to experiment with shutting down Duval Street. I think it would bring, look at all the street fairs that we have and how it brings the community together. So I really do, I would agree with testing it out at least. It doesn't hurt to try it, and then we can work on what works and what doesn't and tweak it from there.
The current District Court Commissioner, Richard Payne, has been trying to push the Navy on the issue of the Truman Harbor and the city's use of that harbor. The city's been shut out of that. Do you plan to continue that effort to get the city's use of Truman Harbor with the Navy?
Well, Judge Payne has certainly been a fighter in that regard, and I commend him on that. The issue becomes one of cost, and I understand the issue from his perspective in the sense that the Navy deeded this property over to the city, which included the riparian rights to the deed, which are the water rights. And then at some point after that conveyance, they took back those rights. In any other circumstance, if there was any other party, that would be a taking, and that would be a lawsuit. So I certainly understand the legal aspects of it. However, when it comes to cost, whether the City of Key West has the funds to continue to fight this against the Navy, that's another consideration that we would have to make, and I'm not sure I would be willing to make that. But I think there is a plan in place right now for the Navy to meet with the city to try to coordinate what we can do to share that harbor. So I'm hopeful that those meetings will be fruitful and that we can come up with some sort of settlement with the Navy so that we would have access to the harbor for certain events as well as the Navy.
This is okay. I know from painful experience on HARC that most people dislike and are distrustful of change. How would you handle making decisions which you believe are beneficial but unpopular in your district?
Just in my district or with HARC as well?
No, you're going to have to make decisions which you believe are beneficial.
Well, you can't make everyone happy.
But aren't going to be very popular.
Yeah. You have to look at what is for the good of the town, and sometimes things may not seem like the best idea in the beginning, but we have to start being proactive instead of reactive with ideas and with proposals, and we need to work together. So if we have to look 10 years in the future, we have a 2011 5-year strategic plan. It's 2018. We don't even have the recycling bins on Duval Street that was in the proposal. So we need to start, you might not like that we wanted recycling bins back then, but now we need them. So we need to all work together and take a look on how to improve the town altogether.
This question is for Greg. If you were currently sitting on the city commission, would you be voting during this budget time to give employees raises or to fund nonprofits?
Well, I think that, from a political standpoint, that's an easy one, if we can fund the nonprofits. I think in following the streaming today of the city commission meeting, I think that's going to happen, so that may not necessarily be an issue for us. I believe the nonprofits will be funded. As far as this giving the employees raises, I understand that there is inflation, and I understand that it's a standard raise that they didn't necessarily receive in years past. So I'm not necessarily opposed to that, but it would be a lot easier to give perhaps the directors less of a raise and give the city employees that needed lower end of the scale a raise. So I wouldn't have a problem in paying the Indians and not necessarily the Chiefs.
Jennifer, again, we may be here 4 years from now. If you are elected, I would like to know the 1 or 2 things that you would like to see changed in the city by that time. You got 4 years to do it in something realistic and tangible that can be measured.
Cleaning up the city, for sure. We're losing that clean, healthy, safe aspect. Crime has increased, and that's not what's going to bring tourists here. So focusing on that, cleaning up Duval Street, those are really, really important to me, I think, to focus. And then that would be it.
Question for Jen. You're in the bar business. Would you support mandatory commercial recycling?
Absolutely, we should be doing that years ago.
Yes, 100%.
We're doing really good on time. You guys are fantastic. So if you can give me some quick questions and answers, we can do one more round.
Okay.
And still be on our timeline.
Second, third, or no crossing, additional crossing across 10th and 8th Streets. This is the additional new crossing connecting the roadway behind Winn-Dixie to the driveway behind Conch Plaza, or second crossing on Patterson Avenue, sponsored by the current commissioner.
Are you talking about the bike path?
Yes.
Or the bridge
Yes.
over the canal?
Yes.
A bike path, yeah, I think we can do what we can to increase bike traffic and bike flow. I live right near the Staples Bridge, where we have lots of bicycle traffic, and anything that we can do to get people out of the cars and on bicycles, I'm for. We do need some safety. We have some better markings. I would be all in favor of perhaps marking the road a little bit better. I know that Staples Avenue, there's a lot of bike traffic there, and it can be dangerous.
Okay.
This question's for Jennifer. What do you think the one thing that the city is doing right now that's good, and the one thing that you think needs improvement?
We definitely need to improve in communication on when certain issues come up at commission meetings. I know a lot of business owners have missed really important opportunities to stand up for themselves and to vote, and I think that again, bridging the communication is what's going to help us the most in order to all work together to make this town successful. I think that making a great effort to make it a biking and walking town, we're really working on it and really pushing for it. But again, we need to all work together, and we're totally missing that gap in communication right now.
Regarding bicycles, I just got back from a trip and I was in Amsterdam. I'd like you to know, how would you address the incredible downsides that Amsterdam has experienced with bicycles?
I'm not familiar with the downsides that Amsterdam. Can you explain what that is?
If I can just, well, one thing, they have to dredge 20,000 bicycles a year out of the canals because people, when they break, they just throw them in the canals. And second, they are incredibly dangerous.
Well, I think with one of the recommendations that we made as the Parking and Alternative Transportation Board was for the city to hire a multimodal transportation coordinator, which I think if that is budgeted for and approved, that person would be able to get out and do some education with the schools, education as far as bike paths, to show people that are riding their bicycles now what the rules are with regard to bicycles. I think all of that can help. So from what a city's standpoint, from their standpoint as far as what they really can do, I think hire a multimodal transportation coordinator will go a long way.
For Jim, City Manager Jim Scholl, if and when he retires, what would you look for? What would you look for in a new city manager, and where would you look? Where should that search take place?
That is a hard one. I don't know how to answer that. I would have to look more into who would, again, thinking outside of the box, someone with experience, but also a personal relationship with the town and knows, what needs to be accomplished. But I'm not sure where I would look, to be honest.
Great. What would you think?
Well, I think what we've done in the past and seemed to be successful is certainly there would be a committee appointed, and we would each appoint someone in the committee to evaluate and come up with their rules as far as being able to vet. I think it would have to be something that would be offered. We'd look everywhere for one. Someone with educational experience in running cities, that certainly would be a priority. And I think we have, there's other directors in the city that may also want to apply that have that educational experience as well. But I think we would need to throw them all in the pot and vet them and see who would qualify and be the best to help us in the city of Key West.
Thank you guys, great job. We do very little Wally, come on up. Great job on both sides. Panelists, great questions, we move things along well.
Yeah, getting old is not what you thought it was going to be.
Everyone, settle down. Mary Lou's name tag, and we'll let her start us off. No, you gotta use the mic, Mary. I don't know if there are seats. There are a few seats around, so we've got to keep the door cleared out. Reset her time. I'm sorry, Mary Lou.
Hi, I'm Mary.
See, she's already taken over.
And I'm running for District 5 City Commissioner. I moved here 17 years ago after a long career in public works construction. I spent a few years continuing that career as a consultant, and then I met my husband Charlie, who owns Sturts Lock and Safe. I think you all know him. And we got married, and then I ended up with two children back there, Chris and Carly. And Charlie owns a small business here in town, Sturts Lock and Safe. And so now I'm retired, and I have the time to devote to being district commissioner for the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Lou.
Good evening, I'm Wally Moore, and I'm running for District 5 City Commissioner. I was born and raised here. I live in the house I grew up in. I have been married very happily to my wife for 25 years, Valerie. I have two boys, Wallace III and Charles. And if elected, I will not take the salary that is given. I have, as part of my campaign, to give that back monthly to the local nonprofits. And I would be remiss to not end anything by saying, remember, you get more with Wally Moore.
Okay, your turn.
This question is for Mr. Moore. Just curious, if you were, I asked this question to the group earlier, but I'm curious to hear y'all's stance too. If you were on the city commission currently, would you be supportive of reinstituting the funding for the nonprofits, or more in favor of giving pay raises to the employees?
I would definitely look into possibilities of being able to do both. Nonprofits are huge down here, and they benefit a lot of people, working parents, so we definitely need to support them. And I will be doing my part monthly, so I will lead by example.
John.
Mary Lou, you guys have the advantage of hearing some of these questions a second time, so I'm going to use one that I used before. I would like for you to state what you believe has caused the shortage of affordable housing. I'm not asking for solutions. I want to know if you know what caused it here.
Well, I think there are several contributing factors. One is the amount of second home that have been bought, and so that's second and third homes, I should say. That's one thing that has contributed. I think the fact that we haven't had a comprehensive plan to look at how we go about bringing housing to the community, that would be where I would start. So those two things I think are important.
Question for Mary Lou. A question I've been waiting 25 years to ask you.
Bill.
You remember... You remember Peter Horton?
I sure do.
Peter Horton, former airport director, former assistant county administrator, former city assistant manager. You appeared before the county commission, I'm thinking 25 years ago, and demanded that they do a mental health evaluation of Peter Horton. Can you shed some light on that for me?
Okay, this is sort of fun, Bill, actually. I wasn't here 25 years ago, so I don't know who that lady was, but it was not me. And I only met Peter Horton one time, so I don't think I would be qualified to comment on his
He runs a little loopy. All right, Bryan, to help us out of this mess.
Yeah, let's move swiftly on the Wally. Like Greg Davila, you sat on the Parking and Alternative Transport Group. Thank you very much for doing that. What did you learn from that experience, and what recommendations did you promote or would like to see for the benefit of District 5 and the city?
Okay, one of the recommendations we forwarded is something the city hasn't had, and it's something I do for a living every day, and that's transportation. Hopefully they will institute, I developed with the help of the city staff, a truck route to bring delivery trucks in and out of Key West using, it's a generic route, but it brings them in on our main roads and gets them out and gives them offsprings to get to their deliveries, and at the same time keeps them out of the neighborhoods where the families are, and it's something that can be on GPS and help them to navigate better. What was the second part of your question?
No, it's both citywide and in your district.
Yes, and being on this board, we all have to work together throughout the city because we all have needs that pertain to our parts of the city. But in the end, we're one city, and we need to work together as one.
This question is from Ms. Hoover. Do you think the current tree commission is doing a good job, or do you think that some of the comments that you see frequently in the Citizen's Voice in the newspaper are just that the criticisms?
Well, I think the tree commission has a really hard. I think the tree commission has a really hard job. considering right after Irma, we've had such a loss of our canopies. And I believe that Miss DeMaria is overworked. I don't think she has the time to truly follow up on what her job is right now. So I think we need to look at that. And I think that the tree commissioners need to be, I think they need to stand up more for keeping people that have taken down a tree to make sure that they do replant. And we need to bring that back because it's one of the cultural aspects of our town that I think really stands out.
Okay, Wally, somewhat related to that last question, there has been some significant criticism of HARC. It's a tough thing up here. Where we have the rose between the two thorns. That they seem to approve buildings that are terribly out of character in neighborhoods. Could you please comment on that, and if you think they should take a different tack?
Okay. So while they do that, they also make it where people can only put certain windows in their house. Where there are windows nowadays that are made that look absolutely beautiful that require no shuttering. So as far as them putting allowing something to go there that is, quote, out of place in whose eyes? And that's what we have the board there for, is to make these recommendations. I wish I had the money that the people had to buy their house back again. But I just have a little problem in general about when I'm paying for something and I'm paying those taxes, you're not, regardless of what it is, of you telling me exactly what I can and can't do, regardless of what board it is.
And question for Mary Lou. By the way, I still have the tapes. Question that I asked the last batch about cots. Where would you move cots and when would you move it?
Well, I've actually had the chance to speak to both our city manager, Jim Scholl, and Sheriff Ramsey in the last few days to get their perspective on this because it has been a heated topic here. And I'm encouraged that I see a little bit of movement on both sides right now. I don't know that I have the exact place to put this either. I have had some people starting to look into that, the possibility of potentially putting it where the Easter Seal building is, somewhere in that general vicinity, maybe a portion of that property. But I do know that we've been given a deadline as the city now, and we are going to have to take this one up.
You'll know by now that I'm really getting quite excited about being back here in 2022. So I'm going to ask actually both of you the same question, which is, what 3 achievements would you like to look back on in 2022 having achieved?
Well, okay, Wally did go ahead and say go ahead to me, so I'm going to go ahead. I would, first of all, I've been asked by several people in town who know the kind of person I am to take on the issue of affordable housing, and if elected, I would sink my teeth into that one and come up with a group of people from the community that included businesses and community leaders, elected officials, people that were actually going to live in the housing, and I would put together a comprehensive plan. That would be one thing. I really am seriously concerned about sea level rise, particularly in District 5, and so I would start to look at ways that we're going to improve our infrastructure, and I'm going to keep a good eye on what the county's doing with some of their road projects coming up and see how that could possibly benefit us. And since I live on Patterson, and I know Wally doesn't live far away from there, that has become the new speedway in Key West. So there are other places like that in town that I think we really, I'm sorry.
Well, finish your
okay.
sentence.
So and I would just make sure that we are starting to look at getting rid of those kinds of hazards in our community.
Okay, I have 3, but they all work together, and affordable housing is definitely one. I suffer from this out at the base. 2 guys in 2 days, got to get out of here. I've talked to some developers around town. We need to make it affordable for the developers to make affordable housing. Maybe there's some restrictions we can ease on them, such as cisterns, and making them put a part of their money aside for arts in public places. Art is awesome, believe me, but maybe we need to ease some of the restrictions on them. Secondly, we need to, I'm a very big proponent of public safety. Having people, an ambulance running with one person, it just doesn't cut it. We need to fully staff our public safety. And we can do that all we want, but if they have nowhere to live, what good is it? And I would like to look back and say that I really helped bring Key West back to its residents.
My question's for Mr. Moore. You said you were born and raised here in the Keys, correct? Do you think the quality of life has improved or eroded over the years?
I believe it's eroded. I live in the house I grew up in. When I was a kid, my mailman walked inside, put the mail on the table, had his own glass in the cupboard, poured himself a glass of water, and yelled at my mom in Spanish, "Julio, mail's on the table." As Mary Lou said, my street has stop signs at every block, so it's a little harder for them. When I was a kid, I played ball in the street, and we stopped maybe every 45 minutes for a car. When my kids were growing up, they didn't play in the street. So I believe in that way it has. I grew up, this was a military town. We didn't know what a cruise ship was. But there's a lot that can be done to clean up the town and make it nicer for those of us that are here 365 days a year.
When I talk to folks who did grow up here, like you and your sister, one of the things they say is what made this a better town was that there were more military here. It gave us a middle class that had housing and health care and all that kind of stuff. What would you do to try to encourage the military to bring more people here?
Well, I have spent some time working with the military on different issues down here, including suicide awareness and prevention and mental health care. So I would use that relationship to start to investigate ways that they could possibly be more involved in our community. I do believe they could also play a part in being part of the solution for affordable housing. So those are two areas that I would look to them.
Wally, give me an example of a particular difficult issue that you encountered in your public life and how you brought that to a successful conclusion.
I could attribute my job, and if I got to pick just one, because I've done 5 Blue Angel shows, but that was getting a brow stand from Truman Annex to Boca Chica at 4 o'clock in the morning so that this show could be a success.
Wally, what's a brow? What is that?
What's that? A brow stand is a very large object that you put a brow on to get off of large ships. And sorry, but day in and day out working with the military, I'm tasked with pulling off the next to impossible, and I do it on a daily basis. The recent recipient of the 3rd highest honor a civilian can get in the Navy, the Materials Civilian Service Award for my work before, during, and after Irma. So you know what, if I had to pick one, I would say it was my work before, during, and after Irma to get the runway clear in less than 4 hours so that supply planes could start landing here.
This is for Mary Lou. Rollback or tax increase? If it's rollback, what would you come?
Well, I don't have very much knowledge of what went on today at the budget meeting, but I'm sure that we're faced with probably a tax increase. I would love to get back to rollback, but I'm not sure that's going to happen this year.
But what would you cut?
If I cut, oh, I'm sorry, like what would I cut from the budget? I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
No, identify something you'd cut.
You know, off the top of my head, I'm not sure exactly. I would have to take a look at the whole budget and make some decisions about different parts of it. I'm not, off the top of my head, not prepared to say.
Okay, we can do one more round. If you've gotten short ones, I would prefer those, so we can stay on time.
Okay. This is for both candidates. Other than affordable housing, what do you think is the greatest challenge that the city is currently facing?
Thank you for asking completely. Well, why don't we start with Wally?
Parking and congestion is huge. And I was very happy to sit on the inaugural board, and we came up with some really good ideas, and now it's up to this commission or the next to put them to use. And there's some really good ideas there, and we need to make this a more friendly place to get around for everybody. I love going downtown with my wife and frequenting local businesses, and I make good use of my annual parking pass.
Mary Lou.
Well, and I'll go along with Wally on the congestion and parking when we're talking downtown, and going back to the question that I didn't have a really good answer for before, that's one of the ways I think that we can increase the revenues and maybe overcome sort of the shortfall that we have right now on the budget, and that is to add some additional metered spaces where we have free parking now, but to make sure that our downtown residents have parking in front of their homes as well. So that's one thing I would certainly work on. The other thing is in District 5, again, I go back to, we have a serious issue with sea level rise, and we are going to have to address that, and that's going to have to come right away.
John, quick question for me?
Quick. For the past 5 years or 10 years, you can choose either time period, has the budget for the city of Key West gone up faster or slower than inflation?
Who's it for?
Both.
Okay. Mary Lou, you start.
I don't know the answer to that question, but I'll certainly look into it. I would hope that it hasn't gone up as fast as inflation, but I don't know the answer.
I think the city's done a really great job with budget, keeping rollback as long as they have. Unfortunately, we had this thing called Irma this year that's affecting all of us. But I think the staff that we have is very mindful of this, because let's face it, they live here too, so any increases affect them too. And we had a great staff, and I look forward to working together with all of them.
John, was that rhetorical, or you know the answer?
It was adjusted a bit by Irma. It actually had been somewhat slower than inflation for a while.
Bill.
Question for both candidates. If Peterson's Poker Run appealed to come back to the city and ride back down again, how would you vote? Wally and Mary.
That's a hard one, but I would definitely have to look at it. They would definitely have to make some changes in order for me to support it. And I'm saying this as the closest thing I got to a brother who runs the largest Harley dealer in the United States. So, we hurt his feelings a lot. But we would definitely have to look into it in the few years past. It's like a lot of events, it's lost its meaning and gotten away from what it was intended to do. And that's what we need to bring it back to what it was intended to be for.
Well, we just had an example of something similar to the Poker Run, and that was the unusual car event that we just had in town. I happened to be downtown for that. And I don't think that was a great event for us. I may have put some heads in beds, but if you were a family walking down the street that day and didn't have earplugs in, I feel sorry for you. So I think we have to look at some of these events and give them consideration, but not without giving consideration to our own residents.
take you back to affordable housing. It is a good question. You heard it before. We all agree we need more affordable housing. We know it's not viable unless you have higher densities and increased heights. We now know District 4 won't allow it. What about in your district?
I believe that there are some places in District 5 where we could do that, possibly at one of the plazas. I have heard several people recently say that some of them are locally owned, and so that if we built on top of them, that might be acceptable because we already have buildings that high there. Some of the strip malls that are going in, putting housing above those, I would be in favor of doing that. Not in the neighborhoods though.
I totally agree with Mary Lou on this one. It depends on where it's located. But our district is kind of oblong and lengthy, and I do believe there are places we could do it. You know, Sonic coming along, they're putting some up on top of there, and I think we definitely need to think outside the box, and at the same time our district does encompass approach on the airport, so things like that would have to be taken into consideration also.
Thank you, Wally. Thank you, Mary Lou. It's great to have such great choices for both of these commission seats. Now, speaking of choices, will the 7 mayoral candidates come on up? And Carol, I am ready for my wine once you get those. We'll take this moment to thank our usual suspects, our AV goddess in the back, Kelly Friends, making sure everybody can hear. We've got Two Oceans Digital doing our video and our YouTube channel. The studios, of course, has set us up with beyond capacity seating, and Fausto's, which doesn't give us a discount. Bill just told me vote by mail ballots go in tomorrow. So that's actually one of the reasons we do our event today, because we wanted everybody to be as informed as possible before you have a ballot. And a lot of these races are decided before Election Day. Everybody sit down here. Who are we missing? George. Yeah, so in case you're wondering, we pulled names out of the hat earlier to assign seating. It was the only fair way we thought we could do it. We've got some time. We're going to do this as... Oh, can you guys turn your names a little to the left so that the panelists can just make it a little bit easier? Is that good enough? About as good as we can. Carrie, can you... Well... These guys, you'll figure it out as we're going, I'm hoping. So, Carrie, turn yours a little bit. If you want these guys to see... I'm sorry it's not perfect. We've never had 7 candidates before. We're going to do our best to be balanced, but it's going to be tough. So we're going to get through it. We're going to stick with our thing. Everybody will get a minute to introduce themselves. We'll stick with our 90-second answers. I really want to discourage any kind of polling question that asks everybody what they think, unless it's a yes or no answer. And again, our other thing is, you don't get to answer any question you want if you're up there unless somebody calls you out, or if you call somebody out, you better expect that they're going to get to respond. Let's just see how it goes. George, start us off. Who are you? Why do you want to do this? We may have to share some mics. It's a logistical nightmare. Thank you, Carol. I will need this. Are you comfortable, George?
Thank you, Hometown, for providing the forum to allow us candidates to differentiate from each other. My name is George Bellinger, and little known fact, this is the second time I've run for mayor. That was the problem the first time. Back in 2000, Jimmy Weakley was going to be unopposed, and I felt the position needed. At discussion of the events and problems of the city, so I put my hat in the ring and I got to enjoy some of these forums. But I'm a family man. I'm concerned with local issues. I have a son in high school. My wife's over there. We're a small business. We understand the importance of the tourist economy. Our business is Key West Eco Tours. We do a lot of work in the environment. I thought for a second about what my superpower might be compared to some of the others. You know, I'll never be as witty as Sloan. I didn't go to Harvard like Carrie. But I relate to normal Key Westers, so introducing Average Man. Todd Dolan.
Carrie, your turn. Yes, right on down.
Hi, I'm Carrie Noda. Let's see, where can we start? I grew up right down the block at 809. I am bilingual. I'm Cuban conch. I went to HARC School. I was probably the first group of integrated students in HARC School in Monroe County. I ended up moving to New York City and Washington, D.C. I'm a trained domestic violence therapist as well as a substance abuse counselor. I love working with my friends from Key West. I got to tell you, the only difference between me and some of the people I met at COTS was that I went away to college far, far away where I knew no one. And when I came back 25 years later, I ended up being some of my best friends' counselor, and that turned out to be one of the best jobs of my life. I am a disaster analyst. I've been hearing for the past 12 months now, you know, oh my gosh, Irma, and before that, oh my gosh, Wilma. Well, the fact is I really was working in the Department of Housing and Urban Development in Washington, D.C. as a GS-15 in disaster response.
Thanks, Carrie.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Bill Foley. Just want to thank you all for coming, the moderators, Mr. Chairman. Really appreciate your help here. Grew up, born and raised in D.C., went to Clemson University, majored in finance, minor in accounting. I've been a books nerd all my life, crunching numbers. Spent 15 years going through government documents, trying to sniff out BS, basically. So I kind of have a feel for it. Both my parents were federal government, so I kind of know how the drill works. Basically, I deserve your vote because I am a problem solver. I'm great with finance, I'm great with problem solving. And I was speaking with a friend yesterday, and I was speaking about this very interview, and I was rattling through everything, and he said, I can't believe you're still so excited about doing this. 15 months later of carrying around my signatures and all the forms and everything. He said, I can't believe you're still so excited. And I said, well, I haven't done anything yet. All I want to do...
Thanks, Bill.
Okay.
You'll get the next assignment for the next...
You said I could finish my breath.
You did. Terry.
Hello. I'm Terry Johnston, candidate for mayor. And I'm going to do something tonight that I don't very often get an opportunity to do, but I'd like to introduce you to my family also. Sitting over at the table are our granddaughters, Scout and Riley, and they are here right now trying to get you to take a sign, and they earn money for school clothes when they do that. So they won't take a sign from home because they do need some sneakers. Scout's getting ready to go into high school, and Riley's at 6B. And I'd also like to introduce to you our oldest daughter, Stacy, her husband, Dan, and my partner, Dar. I've got experience, 8 years in the city commission. Right now I sit on the Monroe County Planning Board working on housing issues. I'm originally from a town of 900, so Key West feels really, really good for me. I love this town, I want the best for it, and I'm going to take really, really good care of it as mayor. Thank you.
My name is Margaret Romero. I happen to be a native of Key West. I came back to Key West, my hometown, after a short teaching career in mathematics and then about 30 corporate years with IBM. When I finished with IBM, I was in charge in some areas of strategy as well as organizational change management. Upon coming home, I became a community activist on many issues, but the one that brought me to it was affordable housing. I volunteer in many activities, And right now, among the other things that I do, I sit on the Naval Air Stations Restoration Advisory Board, overlooking things that are being cleaned up environmentally sound there. All I can say is, I like to think I'm the voice of reason, and I will continue to do the right things for the right reasons, and always with the community in mind. Thank you.
I'm Randy Becker. I'm running for mayor because I am deeply committed to this city now and for the rest of my life. I bring a distinguished career in leadership experience and a deep belief that Key West's best days are ahead of us. I've served in numerous ways around this city on appointed boards and in volunteer positions. The Bahama Village Redevelopment Advisory Committee, the Drummond Waterfront Advisory Board, the Neighborhood Accountability Board, which was a court diversion program for first-time youth offenders, the truancy team at the high school, and things like that, the lifeblood of this community. I recognize we have many problems out there and we can focus on those, but I think I'm the candidate that brings the vision of the opportunities and the possibilities that are there, not just the focus on problems to create the community we want. I'm for the people, for the future. Randy Becker.
I'm Sloan Brzezinski. Thank you, George, for the intro about being the wittiest candidate. I'll never outdo my performance here at hometowns. Calling the candidates. Oh, I'm getting a telephone call.
Who is it?
Hello? What? God? You're joking. You want to know why you're talking about cutting the PAL and the Boys and Girls Club? Have they lost their minds? You want to know? Yeah, I think they have. Anyway, I'm the guy that's going to see things and talk about things nobody else really wants to talk about, just real straight up, okay? And if you don't like that, I mean, you definitely don't want me being your mayor.
Sloan, can I get that number? All right, we are going to get right into it. JDH is going to start us off, and again, I'm going to try to keep it balanced, but I'm going to let these guys have some latitude and see where it goes. So, John.
Thank you. George, we'll start at one end, and I guess we'll probably work down a bit. Question that you've probably heard before tonight. There have been discussions about turning Wall Street into a pedestrian mall, as many cities have done. Do you think that's something worth exploring seriously, and how would you go about that?
Wait, a little clarification, John. Do you want, this is just a question for George, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, all right, thank you, John. I've been thinking about that, and right now there's a proposal for a public park commercial spot down at the end of Duval by South Beach. As long as there's public access remains, I would support that, and I think that would be a terrific anchor for some experimental closing of Duval at night for that side of Duval Street, on the upper Duval Street, from Truman Avenue down to the South Beach, where you have a lot of the art shops and ice cream shops and coffees and shops like that. But before we would implement that, we'd have to survey the business owners, see if they're interested in giving it a try. As long as it improves business and helps out, I think it would be a wonderful addition to Duval Street and attract families and strollers and like that in the evening. And I do support the closing of that area as long as it helps the businesses, and we do it just a trial effort at first. That would be my plan.
Question for Jerry. Assuming the city gets around to creating a new homeless shelter, should it be a full-service facility with, medical facilities, job training, transitional housing assistance, or should it be a bare-bones facility that really doesn't encourage the homeless to come down here? What do you think?
Well, first of all, Bill, I don't think anything encourages the homeless to come here. We have a homeless issue and problem all over the United States, and I don't think Key West brings anybody unique. I think what happens is you get somebody down into Key West who has no idea how difficult it is to stay here, and then they can't get back out. The people at COTS right now, over 45% of those are active working individuals that simply cannot come up with the first, last, and 1 month's deposit. So they're stuck there. Should it be a 24-hour shelter, or should it be just bare bones? I think that Key West is a community of compassionate individuals, and I think we need to provide services for our homeless in that same vein, in a very compassionate way. I do feel that we need to provide them services, because what COTS does right now, it provides them a driver's license, it gets them into insurance programs, and it gets them involved in the programs that they are due right now, and helps them on their way to be sustainable. Should there be educational programs? I'm all for programs that can get somebody out, a hand up, not a handout.
In 2016, Key West voters shot down a proposal to buy Peary Court for $55 million. Instead, the city turned to Plan B and gave $12.5 million to the Cornfield Group in return for deed restricting the units as affordable. In your opinion, was this a sensible use of taxpayers' funds?
If it's kept to the agreement as it was made at the time, it would have been. But now we are hearing a degradation of that agreement, in which the additional housing units that were promised to be built are now going to be basically subdivisions of existing ones. So if you ask me where we're going into the future, it may be a bad deal, unless the commission and the mayor are willing to hold the line to what was originally agreed with the Cornfield Group, which would be that those buildings would be kept affordable and there would be additional units.
This question is for Carrie. Carrie, what do you think?
I think you should use her last name.
Oh, I'm sorry, Carrie Noda?
No, just because Terry you can't.
Oh, okay. Anyway, is that clear, Carrie Noda? This question's for you.
Thank you.
Other than perhaps affordable housing, which everyone seems to agree is an issue, what do you think is the next biggest issue that the city should be or is dealing with currently?
I don't have children. I love calm children. I am horrified that something might happen like 20 years ago, way far away from Key West. I won't even call, just say what the name of that place is. But I think we need security for our new schools. We have had now 20 years since the first time they had the disaster with the children up north. It just made 20 years a month and a half ago. That's how long we've been dealing with this. We in Florida, in Monroe County, have had, what, 5 or 6 brand new schools built in the past 5 or 6 years, and not one has any kind of high-tech security system. We're not talking about police officers, we're not talking about a police state. We're talking about making sure that anyone that has their child in school, we all keep talking about our grandkids and, you know, your nieces, your nephews. Well, we make sure that when they go to school, they actually get to go to school and come back home at the end of the day.
This is for Margaret Romero. Margaret? You've been on the commission for a while, so you've got some experience. I know you've attended endless commission meetings prior to that. If you could pick one ordinance or regulatory change that the city has the ability to control, and you could get that through, guaranteed, everybody'd say, great idea, Margaret, we like it. What's the one thing you'd like to change?
The way code compliance is handled. When I say I'd like to see how code compliance is handled, I do believe in encouraging people to be compliant. However, in listening at my community meetings and in talking with my appointees, which I do every month on a monthly, that regular basis, people don't want code compliance to be complaint driven. They want enough staff to be able to look and see what is wrong and then address it. So that would be one of the things I would like to do, because I think by having more eyes on the street and by calling a few more people into compliance, we could then start to improve quality of life, because then everybody would want to do a little better so they wouldn't be called on carbon.
We had President Trump visit Key West a couple months ago. Hypothetically, if you were the mayor and you had 10 seconds to speak to the president one-on-one, what would you say to him?
10 seconds, that's a tough one. I would love to tell him more transparency, but he's pretty darn transparent. So he's going to do what he wants to do, but at least he's telling us what he's going to do. I would tell him kindness first, solution second, and just keep us all in the loop of what it is you're about to do.
This is for George Bellinger. If I gave you the power of do-over, looking back on the decisions in the city in the last 10 years, what would you have done differently?
Well, we can look where we are right now with affordable housing, and we can go back to some of the issues, maybe even further than 10 years, how they dealt with Truman Annex and the shipyard condos, how they were given transient rentals for a short amount of time, and then they were converted, or they were actually affordable for a short amount of time, then they converted over to transient rentals. Any decisions that the city has made that has not helped provide long-term housing for our workers should have been gone back and reviewed. And those, I believe, are mistakes that we're paying for now, because certainly we are in the middle of a housing crisis. If you own a business, you have trouble finding employees. Lots of people come down to the Keys with the good intentions of working down here, and they leave after a few days, after a few weeks, after learning how much housing costs. So any of those decisions that affected long-term housing for workers, I believe, should have gone back and reviewed.
This question is for Sloan. Do you really want to be mayor? Why do you keep running?
You haven't been paying attention if you ask that question. But you're new to town, basically. I have said every time I ran because God told me to run. And this is known to everybody, especially Bill Becker, who was the first person to ask me that question in 2003 when I ran against Jimmy Weekley and three other people. And he said, what? This was on US 1 radio, and I was sitting in Sam Kaufman's law office using his telephone. And I said, yeah, God told me to run in a dream. Really? I said, yeah. And nothing's changed. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I think anybody who wants his job is insane.
Terry Johnston. The topic of global sea rise has been brought up. The numbers that I've seen most recently indicate that the speed of sea rise is slowed to zero. What kind of analysis would you require that the city use to ensure we don't unnecessarily spend money on something that may or may not be a problem?
Okay, well, first of all, I don't think we're going to spend any unnecessary money because it is a problem. I mean, it's one of, I think, our community's greatest challenge, that we prepare without being chicken little. I mean, I think that we have to look to other communities, look to other countries that have already hardened their structures in preparation for climate change. And we need, just like Miami is doing, bringing people in from Denmark and Norway and areas who have already hardened their communities and use their best practices and start to harden Key West so that we can prepare for future climate change. It's coming.
George, what can we expect from your first 100 days if you're elected mayor?
Well, we can start with going a comprehensive plan for the future, start working on 10 years out. We can look at planting more trees, perhaps down along Flagler Avenue with a row of poincianas. We can look to hopefully get shovels going up on College Road, providing housing for essential personnel, firemen, teachers, policemen. We can look at giving tools to Public Works for a cleaner Duval Street, get them pressure washing over there. We can get all these things up and going. Certainly 100 days, it's not a lot of time, but it's a good place to start. As the mayor for 2 years, we can get things going in the right direction. Hopefully working together with the city staff and providing them the tools that they need. I know those guys work hard. Certainly maybe a policeman down walking Duval Street, get some ideas for cots. We need to get that taken care of. Lots to do for the city. Hit the ground running, start working right away.
Mr. Margaret Romero, what do you think you can achieve as mayor that you could not as commissioner?
From being at City Hall as frequently as I am, and for many hours as I am, it appears that the mayor sometimes gets listened to more than some of the sitting commissioners. And I can assure you that I will continue to be a voice of reason, and I will try to bring our commission, our dais together even more so than it has been in the past, so that we can make good business decisions and make sure that they are made without emotion and look out for the interests of the community, not special friends or special groups. And I think by being in that center seat and helping to chair the meetings, that we can start making some good improvements in that direction.
This question is for Randy Becker. Do you think that the amphitheater has been a success so far, and do you think the city should continue running it or hire an outside consultant to do so?
I think the amphitheater has been a mixed bag. It certainly grew out of a desire to have something down there that might be more of a bandshell nature, and then has gotten larger and larger. But I still don't see the city yet getting the economic benefits of it in terms of income from functions that happen down there. In fact, we know that in addition to the events that have already happened, the people that have been down here have said, no, you need to make more improvements. We don't find what's there yet to the level we want to have it. So there's going to be more money put into this. I think it needs to be professionally run. I think it needs to have a plan, a business plan for how it will operate. And I think that it should not be within the city government. That was not the intent when it was originally designed or planned. I think it should be run so that the city earns a profit off the facility.
Bill Foley, a big part, I think, of being successful in this role is showing leadership and building coalitions. Obviously, you can't talk to the commissioners, which I think is probably not a good thing for government, but I think building support for issues. Tell me about a time in your career where you've built coalitions and brought people together for a political purpose.
I can't speak to a political purpose, but I can give you a good example from my professional career. Post 9/11, we had a client that had lost their entire library we were in the business of doing research on SEC documents, and they had lost their entire library of mutual fund documents. And for their insurance company to pay for it, they had to have it done by the end of the year. So I had to go to almost every department in our company, one person who had all the documents, one person who could put them all on CDs, one person who could do, I mean, it was quite a mess, but we got it done. We got it done on time. And the client actually sent me a clock that I still have to this day, made out of one of those discs. And it's a working clock that I have at my house right now. So that was, I mean, people I had never met before in my company, departments I didn't know existed. I had to go all over the place and try and put people together and make teams out of different people. And it was difficult, but we got it done.
Okay, question for Terry. Question I asked the previous commission candidates. If and when Jim Scholl retires, what would you look for in a new city manager, and where would you look for one?
Well, first of all, I think that we should always do a nationwide search. I think our expectations for all of our city employees should be that we want to hire the best and the brightest and the most experienced people that we can for our community. So I believe that much the same answer as Greg gave you just a little while ago, that you look internally and you put those internal people who have applied in a pool with a nationwide search. And I think you need a broad range of criteria because I think that you truly need city manager experience, and particularly in a tourist-driven economy. I think that would be wonderful to come up with an applicant who had those types of qualifications. But I think it all boils down to, Bill, is you get the best and the brightest people that you can in order to help us run this city.
So, if elected, would you support a referendum to change over to citywide seats for the 6 commissioners?
Directed to me?
Yes.
Okay. I have opposed that all along. And the reason was because I thought Bahama Village would be disenfranchised. I was sure of it. However, I have not been even a little bit pleased with the current district city commissioner that has Bahama Village in it. I have seen him do things at city commissions elsewhere, meetings, that I wanted to wring his neck over. And they were really bad against the people, the black people of Bahama Village. And so I have slowly come around to Todd German's point of view. There should be citywide voting for all city commissioners. Just like countywide voters for all county commissioners. So you don't have somebody running in a district and there's only 300 votes cast or 400 and somebody wins. I think the city commissioners, they get up here and say, well, I really represent all of you. But the only people they're going to vote for are the people that live in their district. So who are they going to listen to?
Time, Sloan. That feels good. Okay.
This question is from Margaret Romero. Margaret, we heard in the budget hearings today some discussion about the ambulance service. Do you think the city should continue to operate it? Has it been a success so far, or do you think it should be outsourced?
I think while we are looking at a deficit for running the ambulance service, I will tell you, I ride the ambulance with those folks because I'm certified, and those are the best people we could possibly have. They are our local people who live here, and we need to recognize that things like police service, fire service, are things that we need to pay for as a community. I don't see us going out to bid. Every once in a while someone would threaten for it, but I think the actual team is providing a tremendous service. I have spoken to the management of those teams, and I think that there are improvements that can be made, because we have to realize what I will call professional ambulance services typically make their profits on what we call interfacility transfers from one hospital to another or one establishment to another, and our local EMS department cannot do that. We are strictly a 911 service, but I do think they provide a tremendous service, and I would be in favor of keeping them. Just a little bit better job.
Let me see. George, question that you've already heard, that's been addressed to one of the panelists. How would you feel about all the commissioners running citywide rather than from individual districts the way they are today? And explain why you feel that way.
I've been in Key West long enough to see both sides. When I first got here, they were elected overall, and then they switched to only within the district. I would keep it the way it is. I believe that the people that live in the district should be able to vote specifically for their commissioner. Their commissioner sits on the dais to represent them. Of course, they represent the entire city, but they should first and foremost reflect the community that they come from. So within the districts of the city, I would prefer to keep it the way it is right now, therefore giving the people that live in the communities direct access and responsibility over their commissioners. Together, they all sit at the dais and work on citywide problems, but I believe it's important that the locals that live there don't get disenfranchised by big groups from other districts getting in on their action, so to speak. So I'm going to vote for keeping it as it is.
Yeah.
Randy, what's your greatest weakness and what are you doing to overcome that?
Well, I guess one of my weaknesses is once in a while I get a little scattered on things. That my ability to focus for long terms on a single thing may not be as good as it could be. The best thing I've ever done for that is marry my wife, who is over there, Elisa, who helps keep me focused on things and reminds me when I'm trying to do too many things at once, look at just one thing. Listening to a wise person is the best thing I'm doing.
This is for Terry. She'll understand why I'm asking the question. There is a view that the lack of strategic economic development plan has resulted in an overdependence on tourism. Is this your view, and is it now too late to adjust the balance between economic growth and quality of life?
No, I don't think it's too late at all, or I don't think any of the 7 of us would be sitting up here tonight. I think we have an opportunity to balance it and a responsibility to balance it. But I think you hit the nail on the head, Brian. We need a strategic plan, and we need a strategic plan that we actually function under. Right now, one of my greatest concerns, and it always has been from my 8 years on the City Commission, was the fact that we didn't have formal objectives and performance reviews for our employees. In fact, in 2008, when we went into the economic crunch, the first thing that we cut was all city training. And I think that's devastating to City Hall. I want to reward the high performers, and I want to bring those other performers up to where they should be, or find them another job. And I certainly think that it is time in 2018 and 19 to invest in our employees in City Hall.
And this might sound odd, but there's 4 or 5 people in this room, myself included, that wrote the city strategic plan that sits on the shelf right on top of the one Ed Block and his group wrote before it. So, and it's a huge document that took months and months of work. Yeah, oh, and Bryan Green did one. So we've had subsequent city strategic plans that have taken tens of thousands of dollars and untold hours of work. It's a matter of what we do with them. So that's not a hit on anybody, it's just they're out there. So, okay?
This question is for Bill Foley. Do you think the city should be in the business of building affordable housing, or do you think they should provide incentives to those who want to build it, or to the folks who have available places to rent, to, if they keep it as rental to locals, should they be incentivized?
Probably the latter. I have no problem with the city building affordable housing, but they should not be in the business of running it. So if you want to incentivize private companies to either build it instead of the city doing it, or to run it, or, you know, to run their own thing, I think they're way more efficient than, no offense intended to anybody here, it would be way more efficient than our government trying to run an affordable housing project.
All right, John, we have time for one more round, I think. And if there's, now is the time, we have time, if you guys want to do any polling questions, like yes, no for everybody, you don't have to, but you're allowed to. This is the last round.
Margaret, about 20 years ago, when I was on the chamber board, we put together a vision document called Vision 2020. We are almost there, and there were a number of things in it that when we wrote it, people said, that ain't never gonna happen. Well, most of it happened, and I think the plan allowed people to plan other things to feed into that. Looking out to 2040, the decisions you're going to make in the next few years, whoever gets elected, how do you think Key West will be noticeably different 20 years from now?
I think one of the things that will be noticeably different is that we will not have as strong a dependence on tourism. I think we will see, I hope we will see more involvement with our military and armed services down here. And I also think we need to diversify our economy. We need to start thinking about that now. There are a lot of things technology will enable us to either run cottage industries or remote industries. So I think we need to put that eye on how do we want to diversify the economy. You know, we've had sponging, we've had cigars, we've had other things in this community, and we've always been reactive. And the time now is to start focusing on where do we want to be, how do our people need to be trained locally so we can keep them local, and where do we want to be at. But we do have to start now, and hopefully some of my background in strategy will help start those wheels in progress.
Okay. We're going to go down the line here, start with George. I just was looking for a one or two word answer from everybody. This is a fill in the blank question. The question is, what this city really needs is a department of what?
Okay, the city really needs a department of intercommunication so they all work together.
Gary, we're going right down the line. Quick answers.
Disaster preparedness.
Financial oversight.
Department that focuses only on housing options for our employees.
Department of quality, because it affects every aspect of government.
Economic development.
Telling the truth.
George, can I change my answer then?
Let's do the same thing again. George, starting with you, have you travelled on the loop, and would you extend it as per the transport recommendations to include a North Roosevelt loop?
So this is for everybody, real quick?
Yep.
Yes, I have. I wrote it just to see what it was like, and certainly having an extension would be a service to not only our visitors, but also to local workers and a relief on traffic, so yes.
Yes, I have ridden it. It's a great, great ride. It's also free. The tourists are really happy because it's free. Definitely stick to it. And we must have a lot of money to be able to pay 5 chauffeurs, petroleum for the bus, and the brand new buses. We're not broke.
I have ridden it, and from the beginning I've been saying let's stretch it out to Stock Island. It would really help with the traffic issue.
I have ridden it, and I would like to see, we give free traffic, or we give free transportation to our guests. I would like to see us afford that same consideration to our working industry here in Key West.
Yes, I have ridden the Devon Loop. Would I be in favor of extending something to what I'll call an outer loop? And I will tell you, yes, I'm in favor of it under a couple of conditions. Number one, the reason we can't provide more bus service right now is, believe it or not, a lack of bus drivers. And that's the big problem. And then, of course, cost. But yes, we need to look at it.
I have driven it, ridden it. I haven't driven it. I wanted to, but I have ridden it, and I would like to see it extended to both clockwise and counterclockwise loops on both the Roosevelts.
I have not ridden it because I ride a bicycle everywhere I go in Key West. I would like to see it extended. However, I would like for the bus not to really run over me on Fleming Street while I'm in the bicycle lane, which has nearly happened quite a few times.
All right, Dave, bring us home. Last question of the evening.
All right, just out of curiosity and to sort of end the night, starting again at the other end with George, would you please rate the current mayor? Give him a grade? Oh, come on. And tell us what you think he's done well or not well.
I'm going to answer the question. I think Mayor,
it's on your own. I think that's not a great question.
I'm just going to voice my support for the work that Mayor Craig Cates has done, and I think obviously he's been reelected 5 times, so he must have the support of the community. It's not an easy job, but he's managed to coalesce and bring people together and accomplish a lot while his term's in office, and so I'll give him a pass.
No grading, just you can give a thought on the job the mayor's done. Carrie.
Going on with this question?
You can't eliminate everybody else after you let him go on.
No, Carrie's I'm waiting for Carrie.
First of all, I thought that was an awful question. Second of all, I understand what purpose it fit. I mean, you know.
Just that, but
anyway, he was reelected 5 times. We're Americans. I guess he's great, right? 5 times.
5 times? I thought it was like 12. He's been nothing but nice to me. Other than that, I'll pass on the question.
I'll tell you my thoughts is that Craig brought shovels to the Truman waterfront and got it done when so many others could not, and I truly appreciate that.
I'm not going to evaluate somebody that I'm currently serving with, but I will tell you what I will do differently, and that is I will be more courteous and I will listen to everyone while we're on that dais, and I will be available at all times to everyone.
I think Craig did a good job with what he focused on, which were projects, but I think going forward, I would hope we'd have more programs than projects other than housing.
Well, in 5 terms, he did not build a new homeless shelter. He brought, I thought, dignity to the city commission meetings overall. He built a $50 million dog park on Truman Waterfront. He built a very expensive city hall. Cost a lot more than he could have imagined. I told him going in it would. And on his watch, $18 million homeless animal shelter was built, but still they haven't built the home. homeless shelter. Somebody should have asked me about the homeless shelter and where it should be put. Since I'm the only one that knows anything about it who's in this room.
Thank you, Sloan. Thank you, everyone. All right, let's stick around and talk to these people. Now you've got to know them a little bit, you can get to know them a little more.